Hello everyone and welcome to Intelligenza's Mindful PMO webinar. I'm Carmen Marsh, the CEO of Intelligenza, and before we get started, I would like to tell you a little bit about who we are. So Intelligenza is a boutique consulting company located in Roseville, California. Our team has over 20 years of hands-on experience in building corporate project management office, including project, program, and portfolio management processes. So the mindful PMO concept really takes a deeper dive into the areas of leadership that is so important for implementation of a successful PMO. And this webinar will give you a new perspective on how the mindful leadership can really benefit your PMO. I hope you'll enjoy this webinar presented by Leslie Gaisley. She's an experienced PMP and CSM and has been doing professional training for the last 20 years. Leslie, take it away.
Thank you, Carmen. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our presentation of the Mindful PMO. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to be leading this presentation for you today. Before we begin, I'd like to talk about some terms that we're going to be using in this webinar. We'll be using the term a lot, mindfulness and mindful management, both of which are becoming very popular in the business world as the concept of mindful leadership becomes more mainstream. So when we talk about mindful management, what we're referring to is a practice where one learns how to focus one's awareness in the present moment, accepting what's happening now, and it's becoming recognized as a valuable and necessary soft skill among managers and leaders. So it's not a religion. It's not a new age fad, as some might think. In fact, there's proven neuroscience behind the concepts and benefits of mindfulness. It's not even about stress reduction and taking deep breaths and meditation, although that is a tool that can be used in practicing mindfulness. If you decide to look into it, it certainly can offer that benefit. But really what it's about tapping into a potential that everyone has, but you really don't get much training for it when you are working to become a manager or leader. And as we go through the concepts, you'll see what I mean. And again, you'll probably recognize that it is a very, or can be a very valuable soft skill. So in other words, if you've heard the term mindfulness and you see pictures like the one here, it's not just for yoga, meditation, and Buddhist monks. It's really for everyone. And hopefully you'll see what we are getting at. So mindful leadership is a term that you'll hear broadly, and I think the concept sort of first came into being by the Institute for Mindful Leadership, which was founded by Janice Marturano back in 2010. Basically, was led to that road through her own personal experience and did explore mindfulness more as an individual personal practice. But she was to take that philosophy and that concept to her executive team at General Mills, and it has sort of started to trickle down within executive representatives of Fortune 500 companies. Her nonprofit organization is dedicated to training and supporting leaders in the exploration of mindfulness and leadership excellence, and we are embracing those concepts in our own Lead Mindfully training. So mindful leadership essentially is the embodiment of leadership presence, and it's all about cultivating focus, clarity, creativity, and servant leadership, or in the way of compassion in the service of others. And I underline that point because I think that's something that I, in my own experience, and I know some of the folks at Intelligenza have experienced themselves in their career, that often we find management that is strong but lacking in really understanding their impact and how their followers are being impacted. It's an understanding of oneself as a leader, meaning that it's not just about understanding yourself, who you are, but really being able to embrace the concepts of understanding your weaknesses and knowing what you're capable of, not being afraid to be who you are, not one person in private, not one person in public, but being really who you are and authentic, and having the strength of character to make the choices that sometimes need to be made that are more ethical. We often have found ourselves as leaders to be making choices that are sort of forced upon us. Mindful leadership is about making the right choices ethically for your teams. And there's this concept of acceptance of full and complete non-judgmental attention in the present moment, meaning that, sometimes when you're dealing with a situation or an event, it's not what you were expecting, it's not what you wanted, it's not what should have been, but it is what it is. And so the mindful leadership is all about accepting non-judgmentally, just deal with it as it is, make calm and rational choices, just deal with it and move on. So a mindful leader is basically somebody other than a manager. And we distinguish between managers and leaders really in a profound way. A manager is someone who's good at executing, but a good manager is one who is good at executing. The next step beyond that is a leader who is consistently making a difference in his work and in his life. The mindful leader exercises authentic leadership and with genuine intentions. What by that is authentic leaders are self-aware and they're genuine. They are self-actualized and they're aware of their strengths, their limitations, and their emotions. They are able and willing to show their real selves to their followers. And in other words, they don't act one way in private and another way in public. They don't hide their mistakes and they don't hide their weaknesses out of fear of looking weak. In fact, trying to do so actually is more obvious than people might think, and it inspires distrust in those who are following you. Authentic leaders, mindful leaders are mission driven, they're focused on results. They lead with their heart and not just with their minds, and they communicate directly. But they communicate directly with empathy because being direct without empathy can often be cruel. They are aware of their impact on others, and that's very important. I've seen many managers who thought that they were good leaders, but were really sort of blind to the actual impact that they were having on those that they should have been inspiring and motivating. It affected not only the individuals, but usually it starts to affect the people around those individuals when they are being negatively impacted. So a mindful leader is always aware of how they're impacting others in their leadership. They improve creativity, they inspire innovative thinking, they promote it, and they work to help promote focus on the current reality, focus on what is at hand and what needs their attention. And again, they foster this not only in themselves, but they're promoting that in others. And a word that comes to mind, what a mindful leader is not and should not be, is a micromanager, because micromanagement really sort of stunts or blocks creativity, innovative thinking, and focus. They accept the situation as it is. They are able to make calm and rational choices in the face of a current event that, again, isn't maybe what they expected or what they wanted, but it is what it is. So they deal with it head on, they deal with it non-judgmentally, and they understand that this too shall pass. So when we talk about the concept of the mindful PMO, we sort of approach it like this. If a mindful leader is vigilantly aware of their impact as an organization, then so should the mindful PMO be aware of their impact as an entity on the organization. If a mindful leader is creative, innovative, and has focus on the current reality and is promoting that not only within themselves but with others around them, so then the mindful PMO should be promoting an environment that fosters creativity, innovative thinking, and focus. If the mindful leader is one who is working to improve their practices and their training, so the mindful PMO should be supporting the cultivation of mindful leadership concepts, and so should be finding ways to help people practice and train and grow as mindful leaders within a mindful PMO. Kind of look at it like this. If I'm mindful, you're mindful, everyone is mindful in the PMO as project managers, the PMO organically becomes a mindful entity and therefore are carrying the characteristics of being creative, innovative, focused, self-aware as an entity, and last but not least, agile. So we could think of the PMO as an entity that is a collective of talent, skill, leadership, and vision. So the goals of any PMO just in general would be something along the lines of these. As an enabler, we would be the driving influence that fosters strategic alignment in project performance improvement. So the PMO would be working to help develop future project leaders and support the success of an entire organization. We would be looking to consolidate, streamline, distill our processes. There's this paradigm shift that's happening that's moving away from this onerous approach to documentation where we spend hours writing tomes of documentation that really, while it looks really impressive, and I've written such documentation myself on the outside, frankly, no one's really reading it. Or if they are, the pertinent points that are meant to be documented are kind of getting lost in the narrative. They become shelfware. And so Agile kind of uses this methodology of user stories as opposed to cumbersome requirements documentation. They're keeping it short and sweet. They're checklists, or we use templates. So the idea is keep the processes standardized, but keep them short and sweet. Use templates, use checklists. Partner with the organization. We want to work with the business to design an effective, find the problem, solve the problems, and put together a collaborative management team. Work to create a single culture with one set of goals and objectives for each project, and bring the business together by instigating that collaboration. And then be prepared to change with the business, because let's face it, while strategic plans are important for any business, they're never really complete. And to coin a PMI term, strategic plans are in essence living documents, and they direct the work of the organization, but they need to be flexible enough to be modified as changes require shifts in the direction for the business. The PMO needs to be a dynamic organization that is prepared to meet these changes in a positive way. So if you bullet point the attributes of a successful PMO, we look at dedicated leadership that provides oversight. We want PMO leadership that's not getting into the day-to-day management of projects. They need to be sitting up at the higher 30,000 foot or even 10,000 foot level of projects so they can provide that oversight across all of their projects. It's really important for that oversight to be in place. The PMO needs to be staffed with experience and not just training or education. Really, it becomes a blend that's needed. Relevant experience is very critical. However, certifications or training help to shape and refine that experience so that there's this shared body of knowledge that and a common language that can be spoken. That's sort of the point of the PMP, or one of the PMI certifications, is that it's not a replacement for experience, but it helps the project managers who have this certification. We all speak a common language. Executive backing and sponsorship is very key, and those of us who have been on projects that are lacking in executive sponsors have seen how that really drags on the project and leads to not usually to success. It's very important to have that visibility and that sponsorship. High visibility and transparency is very key, and some might think that these are the same terms, but while visibility is similar to transparency, the differences are rather key in understanding how their dynamics work. The simplest explanation might be to say that what's visible is by definition transparent, but what's transparent is not necessarily visible. Or to look at it another way, visibility could be considered to be the sharing of the information I want you to know, whereas transparency is just that. It's full viewing, full exposure, nothing hidden, nothing obfuscated. So we like to suggest both, however, within reason. Obviously, there's areas of the business that it's not appropriate to have full visibility, but in terms of the project context, why not share information across your projects, share your successes as well as your failures or your mistakes, because that's how we learn. We learn by other people's successes, but we also learn by their mistakes. So these are opportunities that are lost if we are not pushing for full transparency and visibility across the projects. Effective authority, we feel that the PMO should have a representative or be a partner at the executive table. Without this, it's sort of like those of us who are project managers who are not involved in the initiation and planning stages of a project and suddenly have a schedule that is thrown down at us. And in the course of the weeks that follow, we find that there was certain aspects of the planning that just were overlooked or weren't there because the project manager wasn't there to provide that input. The PMO is a similar approach. The PMO should have the authority to be able to remove obstacles. Many project managers have lived with the credo, all of the responsibility, none of the authority. And the PMO can often be following this same credo. So if the PMO does not have the authority to remove obstacles, then it's really difficult for them to be held accountable for the success or failure of the projects they're responsible for. Agility and flexibility are also very key. And again, these might be thought of as the same terms, but they're slightly different. So an organization that is flexible is able to make changes within the current organizational system. You can sort of shift a little here, shift a little there as you need to. An organization that is agile is able to change the overall system completely in response to some external force or requirement. So in other words, an organization that is agile can respond in a wide variety of unexpected external surprises. And the last point is using metrics that matter. Don't spend unnecessary and valuable time grinding out reports that don't provide any value. We love our dashboards, when we do our reports, but are we picking the right metrics to track? Consider the point that tracking the wrong metrics is pretty much almost as bad as tracking nothing at all. So when determining those key metrics, consider metrics like or measurements like progress and quality, and here's a thought, team morale, which is arguably directly related to quality and productivity. So when we map mindfulness as a practice for a PMO, we kind of looked at it like this. The mindful PMO that exercises authentic communication can help to set clear direction, communicate thoughtfully across the organization. They're consistent and they listen. It's not just about the message you send, but it's about understanding the message that is received. Say what you mean what you say, and do so honestly. Be open-minded in setting worthwhile goals and clear direction, and don't overgeneralize or make sweeping statements. Work with the facts and don't just assume. The mindful PMO that exercises creativity, honesty, and innovative thinking can make conscious choices and follow the servant leader desire to serve first. By embodying these aspects and the practices of mindful leadership as an organizational entity, the PMO could conceivably organically move to the philosophy of servant leadership while inherently sharing power and putting the needs of others first. This helps them to develop and perform as highly as possible. And this helps to unlock purpose and ingenuity within the organization, which ultimately results in higher performance and engagement. And ultimately, your employees are fulfilled. The mindful PMO that exercises trust and trustworthiness can adopt and foster transparency that inspires trust. When we talked about transparency earlier, one of the hindrances, let's say, to full transparency and visibility is usually trust. A lot of times, project teams, managers will hide mistakes if they fear a punitive response. If you can inspire trust within the organization to recognize that mistakes are just as valuable learning opportunities as successes, then you can build and inspire that trust within the organization. The mindful PMO that exercises emotional intelligence can be resilient through change and adverse conditions. They can remain agile and be able to help adopt changes in a positive way and seeing that as a positive opportunity. And they can help to set those well-defined and achievable objectives. Last but not least, kindness and compassion. These inspire motivation in teams. You can inspire, support, motivate your teams, particularly through the tough times. And you can help to foster positive relationships and communication across the business and support the needs of all your departments and all of their projects. So if you consider your PMO, would you think that they are leaning towards or adopting some mindful practices? Are your objectives well defined and achievable? Can your processes and measures be agile, and can they shift with and support the business needs and the changes that ultimately will happen? And Are they not just focusing inward on processes? Sometimes as PMOs, we get so focused on doing things right that we're not doing the right things. We're more focused on just the processes for the sake of processes and not really looking outward to determine whether those processes are appropriate and productive. Is your PMO able to react positively to the ever-changing conditions of your organization's direction, vision, mission, and operations? Is your PMO working to foster positive relationship management across the entire business, not just with certain departments, but everybody organically across your organization? And can you support the individual needs of these departments and their projects in a timely manner? And we hope this is always the exception and not the rule, but sometimes in those critical conditions or situations where something has come up unexpectedly and they need people to react and move quickly. Is your PMO flexible and able to change even the project governance for successful project execution, but not sacrifice project progress and status reporting in the course of doing so? If your PMO isn't leaning so much towards mindful, here are some suggestions. We really embrace the concept of agile as in project management and as a PMO. So become an agile PMO. Hire and train your project and program managers and other project management practitioners that are versed in agile project management methodology. There's several certifications out there, and even if it's not strictly agile project management, even just agile methodology like Scrum, and embrace the training and education in the area of agile. Become dynamic or become more dynamic. Ensure, look at your processes, look at your templates, do some house cleaning and refine those processes and make sure that they're organized and they're ready for modification and change as the business changes. If you're not as flexible as you could be, see if you can find ways to become more flexible and be diverse. Understand, of course, that not all projects require the same love and care and attention, rigor and structure, if you will. So practice working to become more flexible and diverse. Become transparent if you can, and try to build that trust and inspire that trust within the organization, and try to embrace that concept that we learn from each other's successes as well as from each other's mistakes, and give everybody the opportunity to have that insight into learning opportunities. So in closing, what we'd like to propose is that mindful management equals successful leadership. And what we mean is that while we feel leadership is critical in every successful project, we believe that successful leadership cannot fully exist, or at least can be significantly and profoundly augmented with mindfulness. That concludes our presentation, and we will now be happy to accept your questions or your feedback if you have them, and I will now turn the presentation back over to Carmen Marsh. Thank you everyone for your attendance. Carmen?